get yourself those staples, take your fabric, roll it out the length of your bed, and I recommend you do not get cheap with fabric. It's very tempting to go, oh, I got a 4-foot bed, I'll buy 6-foot fabric. Or I got a 3-foot bed, I'll buy 4-foot fabric. It becomes useless very quickly when it's too small. It'll only cover the babiest of plants. It's called floating row cover because you put it over loosely, and as the plants grow, it floats up. The plants can just push it up, right? If you have to pull it tight to get over it, it's not floating row cover anymore. It's garden girdle. You know? They can't get anywhere. They're stuck. You know? They look pretty trim, but they're not growing very well. You know? So you want to have nice loose cover. I don't think I ever want fabric that's smaller than 7 feet. That way I can cover big plants. I can cover peppers, protect them from frost. Yeah. Not the way we have it, because we have stakes over it, but I didn't have a stake that way. Anyway, I recommend 7 foot. Okay. So you get that 7-foot fabric, you roll it out, cut it, right? Then you take it and staple it on the north end or the west end, the windward end, right? So that where most of our wind comes from, now once in a while you get a storm will make that not work. But usually not the first frost storm, that's usually coming in from the north or the west, right? When you go out there, that fabric, which you're going to, after you staple the north end or the west end, you then roll it up into a nice tight little rope. Take a few more staples and put it over. Looks like a little white snake out there, right? Or a rope, white rope along that, right? You come out, dinner's on the stove, you got to get your stuff covered, get back in before it burns. You pull those stakes off, the wind blows it over the bed for you. I mean, literally, lots of times, if you were a gambler, you could let the wind keep it over the bed, it probably would. I mean, it might stop blowing, but there's not much chance it's going to switch direction. I don't recommend that. I mean, you did this work this far. Stick a few of those staples that you just pulled off on the other side. You're done. You go back in and finish your dinner. And for those first frosts, that's all you need. Unless you get kicked in the teeth. Once in a while, every 10 years or so, you get kicked in the teeth. That's nature, right? Yeah.
So Patryk, they have different densities of the row cover. There's heavier row cover and lighter row cover, and I always thought it was because of the sunlight that it allows in, but I'm not sure if it's that or durability, or do you have a recommendation on that? Or
I recommend the medium at least. And I'm a connoisseur program. I buy some heavy setting stuff too. Depends on how much I want to protect. I can tell you that there's a little bit of protection even from the lightweight. It eventually, as they get cold, as cold in there as outside, but it slows it down, reduces the wind effect and everything else. It's not like it has no protection. So it might help to pull something through. The amazing thing about row cover is that not only is it reducing the wind chill effect and holding whatever the heat in that's like below the ground, you know, the sun is heating the soil all day, and then it goes back up at night. Now you're slowing that down. Because it's white, it's also reflecting that heat down. And I learned this one year when we ran out with everything we had to cover our summer garden for the first frost. You know, one of those I Love Lucy nights, you know, we used gardens in the end. You name it, we covered everything in the garden, you know, looked pretty crazy. And one of the things we did was we covered half the bed with blue tarps and half with white row cover. Came out the next morning, blue tarp is a lot thicker than row cover, right? Underneath the blue tarp, black basil. Underneath the row cover, green basil, no damage. Okay. So that white reflection actually comes. That's part of what's happening is it's reflecting the heat back. Whereas that blue tarp is just sucking the heat out. Sucking it away. So, yeah, I would recommend at least a medium row cover. That's usually good enough. I don't think you need more than that. Depends on what you're trying to protect. You know, if you can get your hands on some heavyweight, it doesn't hurt. You get more protection. You know, if it's quarter hardy, then maybe you want that. You know?
Well, if I tend to use the plastic over row cover, well, in those situations, I tend to use the lighter row cover. Just because I can manipulate it better under the plastic.
The very lightest, has it been working for you?
Yeah, but
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Okay.
I mean, you get
the heavier. I guess I like you say, when it's just you're only using row cover.
Yeah. If you're only using row cover, I'd probably go with the medium and give you more protection. If you got the plastic too, then really that second layer in there is just about holding that heat in and slowing down the convective loss. You know, and it's giving you some reflection. I'm not surprised that it worked. I mean, I know that one year CeeLo, I was working at Highland Lake Inn, and I taught my tenants who were renting our house how to do this, and I helped plant the greenhouse. I was supposed to get food from it. I hardly ever got up there to get it, so it was all there. But I left next to a charge plant, a maximum minimum thermometer. That year, temperature outside in CeeLo went to 16 below. It was just a brutal winter. We had an ice storm they called National Guard out for in Flat Rock the same week. You know, there was no sun, no solar gain. We had double inflated walls in the greenhouse, which should have been some protection. Power was out, no protection. Right? No sun, no solar gain. They couldn't find a heavyweight cover, so they took 2 layers of that lightweight cover and put it over the stuff in the greenhouse. They never saw the maximum thermometer. I asked them, did they ever know it was there? They said no. So the coldest it got in that greenhouse all winter, 31 degrees, underneath that barrier. You know? So that shows you what happens. You know, no matter how, I mean, so the plants froze at 31 degrees, they froze. They shouldn't freeze very much. You know? Now, I guarantee you that the leaves higher up, they were probably 28 or something, because that was down in amongst the plants in every bit of microclimate house. You know? But yeah, I'd say play with any row cover, and until you find what you have is not working, it ain't broke. And it's easier for you to handle, go for it. Plus, you don't get out there first thing in the morning, some light's coming through. So yeah, it's plus in many ways. Does everybody know? Everybody knows what row cover is, right? No question about that. Okay, you're gonna learn. You're gonna see it out there. My best description is you don't see it much anymore, but there used to be couches that was on the back of.
Oh, yeah.
And it's also on box springs, spun bound fabric. That's all it is. There's 2 kinds. There's polypropylene and there's polyester. Polyester has a brand name Remade. I don't like it. Sorry Remade, you're going to see this video. Convince me I'm wrong. I don't think it holds up as well. I think it tears more readily. And I've read that it's more abrasive. So if I want to use it on things like peppers that have delicate growing tips, I'm more likely to lob them. So I go for the polypropylene. There's many brand names. I'm not going to go into those now, but just about every resource that sells stuff on this resource sheet sells the fabric. The place I know for sure that sells it by the foot, I think maybe Fifth Season does in Nashville. The place I know for sure. Does anybody know if Fifth Season does?
They do.
They do, okay. So they do it, and that's a lot closer. If you ever get up to Burnsville, Troy's Greenhouse does not sell it. They sell the plastic by the foot. But right next door to Troy's Greenhouse is Fox Brothers, and they sell Remade by the foot. Are not Remade, Floating Row Cover. That's a Remade's become kind of a name like Coke for Floating Row Cover. Okay, so yes.
Well, you're mentioning the higher leaves. Is there concern about damage and frost damage directly to the leaves that are touching the row cover?
Oh, swelling. Oh, there can be where they touch. There can be some damage, and that's actually the difference between a market grower and a home grower. Home grower is probably going to find it easiest to pull that fabric over, but a market grower doesn't want any damage they don't have to get, so they may want to do hoops. Elliott Coleman does hoops or something that keeps the fabric right above the plants. Because right where it touches sometimes there'll be damage because there's no air in between, so the cold gets to it quicker and it gets damaged. Just like anything it touches is going to conduct more cold. Not always, but on really cold nights you get some damage that way.
And are there any plants that you would not put it directly on that's just too tender, a type of lettuce or anything? Or
I've never had any problem. And actually, I was a market grower. I'm a good talker. I can sell stuff that's got a few growers, you know. I just didn't want to mess with the hoops, you know. There was too much trouble for me. So, I mean, you can actually design, if you're handy, which I'm not, you can probably design something that, you know, had that fabric wrapped well by strings or something and slid nicely up over hoops. It was actually easier. But don't set those hoops up high. You want those hoops as close to the plants as you can get because you don't want any more convection underneath. You know, heat rises and that causes air currents and that speeds up heat loss. So you don't want that convective heat loss. You want them to be as close to the plants as they can get. It works either way. The good news is, this system, I'm just giving you the pieces, and you're going to develop your own way with it. You know? And indeed, I'll tell you right now, I've broken most every rule I teach you here. It's mostly gotten new. I've forgotten and left my door open in my greenhouse. Left the cover off. You know, I went to 23. I just had, you know, something important happening at the house and just didn't do it. Came outside, damage was minimal. Just having a greenhouse was enough. Even though it was 23 outside, it wasn't that much damage. Now, did the plants grow as quick the next few days? Probably not. That's another reason, and that's an important point. We're about to talk about making some kind of hoop, and then we'll go out and show you some hoops, show you some ways to improve on hoops, talk about that. But if you have a hoop system, right, and actually Rocco, who was the main gardener here when I first started working here, I was just consulting, he wasn't getting the growth that I was telling him to get. I couldn't understand why. I hadn't been down for a few weeks. I got down here and I realized it was a cold day in October and the hoops were not covered with plastic. He said, well, it's not going to freeze tonight, so I don't need to cover on it. But Rocco, you don't have a greenhouse effect. You're not 300 miles further south right now. You're right here at Mills River. You know, you need to be 300 miles further south where stuff is still growing on days like today. You know? So what you do is you pull the plastic over, you now have a greenhouse effect 300 miles further south and things grow. You know? So just because it's not going to freeze, don't not have your glazing on it. You know, you want that glazing to maximize your heat and keep things growing. You certainly don't want the ends closed up in October. It's going to cook in there. You know, you want it open, you got to play with it. You might even make a fancier one. We'll talk about how to do it, whereby you can slide the plastic up even a little bit. You know, you simply do that by
So you're leaving it on all day?
plastic, yes. Plastic, yes. The row cover, no. The row cover, think of it as a blanket. Tuck your plants in at night. If it doesn't go below 25, and you have better things to do in your life, don't even bother to pull it over. Will you speed up growth slightly if you do pull it over? Sure, we will. But as far as the number of things you have to get done in the day, maybe not the most important thing. You know, the difference is not great enough. Leaving that plastic off is going to make a big difference. It's going to slow things down a lot. So keep that plastic on and push your growth. Yeah.
You do that now? You have plastic over it, even this time of year?
We could. We'd speed things up, but it's not cold enough yet. I mean, I think last night might have gotten down into the low 50s. It's when you're getting down below 35. It makes a big difference. But once you have it on, leave it on. Because every bit of, will things grow faster right now if we did have it on? Yeah, it would. Definitely. Do we want to mess with it yet? No. The truth is, one winter here, the winter I taught the last winter gardening class, we had a ton of tunnels out there. We got a lot of greenhouses. You know what? They're a whole lot easier. I mean, my coworkers, they'll tolerate a tunnel or two out here for demonstration purposes. They don't want to mess with tunnels. You know? It's just a lot easier in the greenhouse than we have the greenhouses. I can't really impose it on them. We kind of do things by consensus. You know? So we don't really do that many tunnels here. But the tunnels work. They're fine. I'm going to try and convince you to make yourself a greenhouse. They're a whole lot more fun. They're a whole lot more likely that you're going to be taking good care of them. But don't not grow winter food because you haven't made a greenhouse yet. The tunnels are fine. I grew tons of winter food for years with nothing but tunnels. Then I got a piece of land that was so windy. I tried tunnels 1 year. I had row cover up in the trees. I belonged to an intentional community. I was not a popular farmer. You know, I couldn't get that row cover out of those trees. It took about 4 years for it to rot out. You know, I went to the greenhouse. You know, I used tunnels.
You were sitting with the greenhouse, right?
Yeah. I knew what was better. But that also was because I got some bargain fabric. That fabric should have held out, but didn't. You know. But tunnels are excellent, and yes, you know what? If you make a tunnel now, you will get more growth. We just, you know, it's all a continuum. You know, you decide when you want to do more work. You know, I would say when the nights are consistently dropping below 50, that you'll see a significant increase if you were to do a test. You would see the ones that were underneath the tunnel growing faster. You would also see ones that were just under fabric growing faster. Fabric is going to reduce the light a little more. To me, the tunnel is a better call that way. But there are people who just leave their fabric on once it starts to cool down, and they get more growth that way too. Anything that moderates that cold night will speed up the growth. It'll grow faster. So, what I recommend is make tunnels or greenhouses. Put them over your quarter hardy at least, right? Quarter hardy is totally arbitrary. I decided, you know, there are things that aren't even half hardy, but they still can survive some frost. And if they're that hardy, you can grow them straight through the winter because you slow down on them until they freeze. So anything, and so I'd say quarter hardy just in between not hardy and half hardy. I don't know if it's quarter hardy or 3/4 hardy or whatever. Anyway, anything that won't freeze with the first light frost, you can grow this way, right? Cover them with fabric on cold nights, but make a tunnel on cool nights and leave the tunnel on, and that way you get more growth. Or maybe not, maybe you've already got everything grown, you just need to protect stuff. Then you don't have to worry about the tunnel until deep cold. All you need is fabric until deep cold. So everything is going to be your system. You know that you need the pieces, right? And so I'd recommend if you're just starting your fall winter garden now, that you make that tunnel sometime in the next few weeks. And that way you know that you're not going to be seeing the slowdown that cold weather brings. You're still going to see the slowdown that less light brings. It's inevitable. You can't fix that one. But you won't see the slowdown that cold weather brings. Not for quite a while. Eventually it'll be cold enough that it'll still slow down. Doesn't slow down too much, you get the growth. So you make your tunnel. How do you make your tunnel? Any number of materials work. But if you have a small garden, if you make metal conduit hoops, one time, they're going to last you forever, and the odds are excellent that no snow load will ever crush them. That's the downside of all the cheaper systems. We get a big heavy snow, and you walk outside, and everything's flat. Now, the truth is, a lot of things like plastic pipe and the fiberglass rods you can buy, they pop right back up after the snow melts off. And you know what? Most of those plants are fine. They've been crushed, there's been some loss, there's a little bit of rot where they were crushed, there was some damage. But by and large, a couple weeks later, you hardly knew what happened. You don't have to walk outside and, oh my God, it's all gone because it was knocked down by the snow. Plants are tough.
What about bamboo?
Bamboo is a fine material. The problem with it is going to be that everywhere where there's a branch, it's probably going to tear your fabric. You know? But they make these things called bamboo splitters, and you could actually split it and have the split side facing up. You know? And have those sides down. It's probably going to still make some wear. It's not going to be as smooth as the other things, but I encourage playing with it. We actually had at the grower school, we had Joe from John C. Campbell Folk School show how to make a whole greenhouse out of bamboo. It works fine. You know? It just is that issue. You know? It's the interface where it might rub and wear out the plastic faster. On the other hand, I don't tend to take the time to do it, but Van Wingerden, right down the road here, and a place called Painter's Greenhouse, and probably any other number of commercial greenhouses, they do not want light loss that occurs from a couple of years of plastic sitting on their greenhouses. Their space is so valuable, they change their plastic, I think it's every 2 years. You know? And guess what they do with the other plastic? They throw it away. You contact them at the right time, they'll give it to you. Now, I don't know if I want the inside walls of Van Wingerden's for my organic garden, but the outside walls, it's not going to be any problem there. You know? They're not spraying plastic through the inside wall to the outside wall. And indeed, I'm not sure that if you turned it on the outsides, that what used to be the outside is now the inside, that it'd be a big deal. The toxins that washed off of the ground, if you got a good organic garden, probably be cleaned up by the microbes by summertime. I don't know that you can certify it, but for home use, and then if you're getting the plastic for free, you don't care if it wears out quick. So you might use the bamboo. I highly encourage using renewable resources. The bamboo sure is renewable. No doubt about that. So yeah, you can use bamboo. You can make your structure out of whatever you want, and it doesn't have to be a hoop. In fact, my favorite is Gothic. You bend it so it's got a point, and then it sheds even more snow. It's even less likely to break. If you're using conduit for hoops for a little garden, you probably don't need it. Probably not going to be enough snow load to even matter. But you don't have to do that. That's the Cadillac. You can literally use something as flimsy as 9-gauge wire. And we've done it lots. I probably still can find something to show you how it works. 9-gauge wire, you can get a lot of hoops for not much money. Buy yourself a big roll from one of the building supply places. All you need is some good cutters to cut it. And then you just cut it to the size and stick it over. And then you can actually make it stronger. We'll demonstrate this. By taking a stake and driving it at one end of the tunnel, driving it towards the opening of the tunnel. Right? Wrapping some baling wire on that, pulling it taut to the first rib of your tunnel, wrapping it around that rib, hold that rib in place because you'll pull it too far otherwise, Pull it taut to the next rib, wrap it around that, hold that one in place, go to the next one, and just pull it taut all the way across. And you've now made a much stronger system. Much stronger. Now, if that seems like some trouble, another one of my favorite techniques, I got to run up the house to get it. I forgot to get the tool. Unfortunately, I live across the street, so that's okay. Is you could take bamboo or PVC or conduit or any number of other things. They got to be pretty lightweight if you're using 9-gauge wire, though, right? And lay it across, and then take concrete reinforcing wire ties. One of my favorite tools for making structures, garden structures, right? You get this little hand tool. It's got 2 hoops on it. On the end, and it's a piece of wire. And you stick that thing around something like it's a PVC going over the top of your hoops, right? Take that, twist it around it lightly, slide this little tool in, give it a flip, and it wraps it tight. And so you can quickly make a structure that's very rigid. And if it's more rigid, even if it's that lightweight wire, the rigidity is going to help it to shed snow, and it's not going to go down as easily. And you could play with it all you want. You could actually then cut yourself bamboo or something else, right? Some saplings, right? And come along and underneath each hoop, put it upright. And that probably would only collapse under the heaviest of snows. That's one way. Another way is take rebar, or if you're trying to save money, or use renewables. You got a lot of trees around. If you ever cut a tree down, you know how they coppice and they grow all little saplings? Get yourself some skinny little saplings that are narrower than the dimension of your plastic pipe. Cut it into 18-inch lengths. Cut it at an angle on one side so it's easy to drive in the ground. Drive that in the ground. Pop your pipe over that. Pop another one on this side. Pull your pipe over. Boom, you have a hoop.
Yeah.
You didn't even have to buy rebar. We tend to use rebar, but I've done it when I didn't have money. I just went out and cut myself saplings, and I had a system up. Now know that the closer you put those ribs together, the stronger your system. It's as simple as that. You make the call. You know? If you're a gambler, or, I mean, and the gamble would have been pretty good last winter, right? No snow problems last winter. But, or, if you don't mind getting up in the middle of the night, and you don't get surprised, it may not matter. You can make it real weak, and it may not matter. It's just your call how well you want to protect yourself.
You get heavier gauge wire ties, right? I think I've seen those. Once you twist around,
Yeah, why would you need heavier gauge ones?
just in case.
Yeah, I've never had them fail, but yeah, you could. And it might be you'll discover an 8 form, you probably can. You know, the wire ties I think are a great tool. As somebody who can't build their way out of a paper bag, I can wire tie my way into a lot of trouble. Okay. Trying to think if there's other. Oh, you can do rebar. You can bend rebar. One thing I like to do is I use the not this garden, but I used to use them a lot. We do stakes only for tomatoes, but I used to do, because I had lots of bamboo, I would get concrete reinforcing wire, the big rolls. When I bought them, they were like 75, 80 bucks a roll. I don't know what they are now, but probably not tons more, right? And I cut them into lengths. Be careful once you cut them, because they'll snap. You have to really eat. I mean, it's a sharp piece of metal. If you are careless when you pop them open, to get them to the right size and let go, and can just slam it in, and you can get in there and give you a good jab. But I make them into towers for tomatoes, right? And then I would cut it. You cut it because it's a whole bunch of squares. You always have these pieces that are just sticking out. So I would take those and bend them around the other side, and that would lock it. And I had a tunnel made out of just one thing. I would put those in the ground over tomatoes, and I'd drive a stake or two to make sure they didn't tip over as the plants got bigger. And then I would take my bamboo poles, and I would do that for like every 4th tomato or so. I would take bamboo poles and stick them in all those nice little spaces that were in squares, and the tomatoes just grew up in between. And so I had lots of those tunnels, because that's how I did tomatoes. In the wintertime, I'd open those up, put them over a bed, and I'd have myself a tunnel. And it held up pretty well. I mean, they eventually go down in the snow. Usually they didn't even go down all the way. They kind of go down a little bit, but they wouldn't flatten out because they had enough strength there. So that, for small scale, you can buy something that Otherwise, where do you put all those things in the wintertime? You know, they're kind of in the way. But if they're out there covering your garden, they're not in the way. Yeah,
I've used masonry ladders before.
they work too.
Yeah, they just tend to bend up after a while. I mean,
That's my
they do
problem.
bounce back. Yeah, and then they fail at the joints. And I like the fiberglass rods better.
Fiberglass rods are great, but wear gloves.
Yes. Well, they have the newer kind that have a little bit more protection on the
Coating
outside.
on it, yeah. I would imagine that over time, though,
That'll go too, I think. Yeah.
yeah. People know about the fiberglass rods. They're about, what, about $1 something each?
Yeah.
Like 50.
If you get them in quantity, yeah, they're. And Seven Springs has them. I don't know who else, but probably.
They're under 2 each anyways, I know that.
Yes,
And they
yeah.
last a long time, they're easy, fast. We have some, we'll show you how they work.
And you can use them in a variety of different ways. You can use them as braces, cross braces, or whatever. Just like you say, you can make your own structure out of it.
Yeah. And what's great about them is they store easy.
Yeah.
They don't take up room. If stuff in your life is an issue, and it sure as heck is in mine, then those are really good. I mean, all those, conduit things you made and stuff, they take up a bunch of room. And the PVC pipe, it never really snaps back after you've been bending it for a long time. They just don't fit well. But that's why those other guys, those fiberglass rods, a whole lot of them in a space that big. You take them together and stick them somewhere and you're done.
But how do you get them, like with the PVC and with the conduit, it sticks over the top of something?
Right, these guys just jam to the ground.
Or just jam?
It's like the 9-gauge wire, same
Yeah.
deal. You just
Okay.
use these
Ground.
instead.
It works great, That is the easy way to do it. What we're going to look at, we might even try and pull up the video. I don't know if we get online, but we can try. We're going to show you what we did. The classier thing is to make a greenhouse. You can make a greenhouse out of the conduit and some 2x4s and plastic. And I'm going to talk about plastic next because it's a lesson I hope you learn from me. If not, I'm going to ask you to tell me your sad story when you hear it because I collect the stories. But this greenhouse, basically you bend the conduit by making a jig in the ground. You just drive rebar into some good hard ground, make a jig, it's the shape of the bend you want, and if you're going to be over here pulling the conduit around it, at the first piece of rebar here, you stick a second piece of rebar right next to it, and you slide your conduit in between those 2 pieces of rebar and then bend it around the other ones. It's so simple you couldn't believe it. The little bit of skill it takes, I can tell you right now, most people do it better than I do. But my greenhouse's work is it always snaps back, so you have to bend it a little farther than any of the jig pieces are. So you just do that by feel. And that's where but the great thing is if you get it wrong, you can just rebend it. It's very easy to bend. And if you bend 2 of those in this kind of Gothic shape, you can then take a piece of 2x4, if you're good with a drill, you can do it yourself, or I can get my friend Greg to do it for me. You basically drill holes at an angle, and you want to have 2 people when you do this part. It's not, I don't think it's possible for one person to do it, and it's not easy for 2. But it's not very long. You can say, hey, friends, come on over for a cup of tea, or a couple beers, or whatever. Give me a hand for 5 minutes. And literally, you can do it in 5 minutes, right? If you got all your ribs made, what you do is you drive rebar along the ground where you're going to put your ribs, right? Slide the rebar, slide your conduit, and make sure you know which end to switch. Right? Slide the right end, the long end, over the conduit. Somebody holds up the 2x4 that's had the holes drilled into it. You just pop the other end of the ribs into it. And it's a tension thing. You got to work a little bit to pop them in, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's up there. It holds itself up, and it's pretty stable, just like that. Not completely stable. They're going to sway a little bit. But what you're going to do then is you're going to come along and get some 1x. You use 2x4s, but you don't need to, right? Some 1x, maybe 1x3 or whatever, and get self-tapping screws and screw where you're going to attach your plastic into the sides of those ribs. And now all of a sudden it's weight rigid because you put 2 structural pieces on each, one on each side and one on top. The thing is really strong. And then where you put those, they're called purlins in the greenhouse industry. Where you put those purlins is important. You might be tempted to put them all the way down on the ground. You might put a second set of them there in the wintertime. But if you want to use this greenhouse when it's warmer, you need to be able to roll your sides up. So I like to set them at about, depending on how I aerate my greenhouse, I like to set them, if I'm orienting my greenhouse so that it's running north-south, so in the morning when the sun comes up, it's not very strong, the entire length of the greenhouse is getting all the sun. And then in the afternoon, at high noon, when there's tons of sun, it's not getting as much sun, but it doesn't need as much, so you might not have to vent. That's how I like to orient it, right? Then, as the day's cooling off, the sun's going down, it's in the west, it's going to catch all that sun again. So you get the maximum gain by orienting it north-south. The truth is, on my property, it fits east-west. That's how it works, you know? It wouldn't work. Too many people would see it, you know, it wouldn't be against the back of the property. So I did, even though I knew better, that's how I did it. But given that, if I've got it running east-west, that means there's a north side to it and a south side, that's the broad facing sides. On the north side, I have my fabric, my plastic, only able to roll up about a foot. On the south side, I have it able to roll up a lot further. That's because I want the heat to rise and go out the south side. I want it to pull the cold air in from the north side. So I'm creating convection by doing that. So you decide where to put your plastic by how the air is going to flow. If it's east-west, you might keep them equal. I don't know if there's a big difference there. But if it's north-south, if it's running north-south, I mean, exactly, I'm wrong, I'll tell you exactly wrong. If it's running east-west, that's where that makes a difference. If it's running north-south, probably won't make a difference. But you do want to have it so you can roll the plastic up. You might want to also have it that it comes down to the bottom. You can attach it there. And I always, for years, just use kind of sloppy things like tires and bricks. I made the plastic a little longer. Here, they use this stuff called wiggle wire. You can buy it from Van Wingerden. It's not that expensive. I recommend it. Because then you can actually pull that plastic down, pop that wiggle wire in, it goes really fast. Now it's a channel, but there's this wire that you kind of push in. It just holds the plastic in place. It works real quick. You'll see it. I'll show it to you. You can take some off and put it on. And you can just do that once. Once it got cold, and leave it like that, you wouldn't have to take it off in the spring. Whereas I always had these tires full of ice, and it was kind of messy. It worked out. I mean, I didn't care enough to do anything about it, you know. So people got now what I'm talking about. You put the side ones on and have them so that when it warms up, you can roll that plastic up. And if it's kind of a long one, you can literally take a long piece of pipe. You know, just you get a piece of pipe that's the length of your greenhouse, and put a handle on it with a crank, so that you know this is your pipe. You got a piece that comes out this way, and then another piece that goes like that. So you have a crank handle. You can roll it, and it'll just roll the plastic up on itself. You can attach that to that pipe, and it'll just roll itself on itself. So it's very convenient. It works really nice in that way.
Can I ask you one point? When you were talking about putting up the 1x3 or whatever,
Yeah.
you just saying screw it into the conduit?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not always the easiest thing to do, but it's not that hard to kind of. It is really hard to do it on old well pipe. That's what I did in my greenhouse.
Oh, yeah.
But there's always an upside to everything. The time it took me 2 days to do it when I thought I was going to do it in a half a day was, it ended the night of the storm of the century. Remember the blizzard?
At 93.
Yeah. And so I woke up in the morning thinking I was going to be delivering bread from my bakery and looked at my picnic table with 20 inches of snow on it. And just thank the world that I had not put plastic in my greenhouse. Because my brand new greenhouse would have been, there's no way a greenhouse could hold 21 inches. And I had no idea, I don't know if anybody did. They did that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, it's okay with me, it took me 2 days to drill all those holes. But I'm not that very good with tools. Somebody else might have done it faster, but it was hard. The conduit, that software tool is pretty easy.
And you're talking standard diameter conduit, right?
3/4 is what I recommend. I recommend 3/4. You could try getting away with half. This, by the way, was all taught to me by a man named Gratus Fisher, who made his living helping people like Van Wingerden do these flood irrigation kind of things, recycle their water and all that. So he's a high-end greenhouse consultant, but his heart was in organic. And he helped Dr. John Wilson teach North Korea how to make these greenhouses for tuberculosis sanitariums. John Wilson had been a missionary child in North Korea, learned from me in the 90s about how to do this. They grow food at sanitariums, and the temperatures regularly hit the 40 below. They have nothing as far as heat. They simply use these principles.
John Wilson.
Yeah, Dr. John Wilson. think he might still be active. He's in his 90s now. Amazing man, and over in Black Mountain. Just, I can tell you stories about him tremendously. But anyway, that's where I learned how to make this greenhouse, this design, which I'm going to